Picture this. You're cruising at 35,000 feet somewhere over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, miles from any coastline, when suddenly your pilot announces a course change due to air traffic control instructions. But wait a minute, who's air traffic control? Which country has authority over a patch of sky that's literally hundreds of miles from any nation's border? Welcome to one of the most fascinating and surprisingly complex systems governing our modern world. International airspace. It's this invisible web of regulations, agreements, and jurisdictions that somehow keeps thousands of aircraft moving safely through the skies every single day without crashing into each other. And the way it actually works is far more intricate than most people realize. Now, you might think that once an aircraft leaves a country's borders, it's basically the Wild West up there, free for all. But that couldn't be further from the truth. What actually exists above our heads is one of the most sophisticated organizational systems on the planet, involving dozens of countries, international treaties, and control centers scattered across the globe, all working together to manage something that seems impossible to manage. The thing is, when most people think about borders, they think in two dimensions, lines on a map. But airspace is three-dimensional, and those invisible boundaries extend straight up into the sky, creating what are essentially aerial territories. But here's where it gets really interesting. These aerial territories don't just stop at some arbitrary height. They follow very specific rules that have been negotiated and renegotiated over decades of international agreements. Let me blow your mind with this. Every single commercial flight you've ever been on has likely passed through multiple countries' airspace, even if you never landed in those countries. That 2-hour flight from New York to Chicago? It probably crossed through at least 3 different air traffic control zones. That 8-hour flight from London to Dubai? Try 15 different airspace regions, each with their own controllers, their own rules, and their own fees. Because yes, airlines actually pay fees for using other countries' airspace. It's like a toll road, but in the sky. And these fees can add up to thousands of dollars per flight, which ultimately gets passed down to you through ticket prices. But the system that determines who pays what to whom is so complex that it requires an entire international organization just to keep track of it all. Now here's what makes this entire system even more remarkable. It all has to work perfectly, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There's no room for error when you have aircraft traveling at 500 miles per hour, separated by just minutes of flying time. One miscommunication, one jurisdictional dispute, one system failure, and you could have catastrophe on a scale that's almost unimaginable. But somehow, it works. In fact, it works so well that commercial aviation is statistically the safest form of travel ever invented. And that's not by accident, it's by design, an incredibly sophisticated design that involves some of the most complex international cooperation in human history. The foundation of this entire system rests on something called the Chicago Convention, signed in 1944. This document essentially carved up the sky the same way that treaties have carved up land throughout history. But unlike land borders, which are relatively static, airspace boundaries have to account for the fact that aircraft are constantly moving through three-dimensional space at incredible speeds. The convention established what are known as Flight Information Regions, or FIRS. Think of these as aerial counties, each managed by a specific country, regardless of whether that airspace sits over land or ocean. But here's the catch. Just because a country manages an FIR doesn't necessarily mean they have sovereignty over it. The distinction between management and ownership in international airspace creates some absolutely fascinating legal gray areas. For example, there are vast stretches of ocean where no country has territorial claims, yet someone still has to manage the aircraft flying overhead. These areas are assigned to nearby countries based on proximity and capability, but the legal framework governing what those countries can and cannot do in those regions is surprisingly nuanced. The real complexity emerges when you start looking at how aircraft actually navigate through this system. Modern commercial aircraft don't just fly in straight lines from point A to point B. Instead, they follow predetermined highways in the sky called airways. These airways are like interstate highways, but three-dimensional, with specific altitudes, speeds, and entry and exit points. But unlike ground highways, which are relatively permanent, airways can shift based on weather, military operations, or even political tensions. Controllers constantly monitor traffic flow and can reroute aircraft in real time, sometimes adding hundreds of miles to a journey to avoid congestion or dangerous conditions. The technology that makes this possible is mind-boggling. Radar stations scattered across the globe track every aircraft, while sophisticated computer systems predict potential conflicts hours in advance. But in remote areas, particularly over oceans, aircraft often fly for hours beyond the reach of ground-based radar. In these regions, pilots are required to report their positions at regular intervals, and controllers use mathematical models to track their progress. What's truly remarkable is how this system evolved. In the early days of commercial aviation, international flights were rare and relatively simple to coordinate. But as air travel exploded in the latter half of the 20th century, the system had to scale up dramatically while maintaining perfect safety standards. This required unprecedented levels of international cooperation and standardization. Today, controllers in New York routinely coordinate with their counterparts in London, Paris, and dozens of other cities to manage traffic flows that span multiple continents. They speak a standardized form of English, use identical procedures, and operate under the same basic rules, regardless of which country employs them. But this seamless cooperation masks some serious underlying tensions and challenges that most passengers never see. One of the biggest challenges facing the international airspace system today is something most people never consider. Money. Operating air traffic control systems is incredibly expensive, and the question of who pays for what has created some pretty intense diplomatic disputes over the years. Consider this scenario. A Japanese airline flies from Tokyo to London, crossing through Russian airspace, then through several European countries before landing in the UK. Each country along that route provides air traffic control services and charges fees accordingly. But these fees aren't standardized globally. Some countries charge based on distance flown, others on aircraft weight, and still others use completely different formulas altogether. This creates a situation where airlines can save thousands of dollars per flight simply by choosing routes that avoid certain countries with higher fees. It's like GPS navigation for your car, but instead of avoiding tolls, airlines are avoiding entire nations. The result is flight paths that sometimes seem to make no geographical sense until you understand the economic incentives driving those decisions. But money isn't the only factor creating friction in international airspace management. Politics plays a huge role too. When countries have diplomatic disputes, those tensions often spill over into airspace restrictions. Suddenly, airlines find themselves prohibited from flying over certain regions, forcing them to take much longer routes that burn more fuel and cost more money. The most extreme example of this occurred during the Cold War, when entire regions of airspace were effectively off limits to aircraft from certain countries. But even today, ongoing political tensions regularly disrupt established flight patterns. Airlines have contingency plans for these situations, but passengers rarely realize when their flight is taking a detour due to international politics rather than weather. Then there's the technology gap. While major aviation powers like the United States and European Union have invested billions in state-of-the-art air traffic control systems, other regions still rely on equipment that's decades old. This creates serious safety concerns when aircraft equipped with the latest navigation technology interact with control systems that haven't been updated since the 1980s. The solution requires massive international investment and coordination, but getting dozens of countries to agree on technical standards and funding mechanisms is extraordinarily difficult. Meanwhile, air traffic continues to grow every year, putting increasing strain on systems that are already stretched to their limits. Perhaps nowhere is this strain more evident than in the world's busiest airspace corridors. The North Atlantic, for instance, sees hundreds of flights daily traveling between North America and Europe. Managing this traffic requires split-second coordination between controllers on both sides of the ocean, all while dealing with weather systems that can force sudden route changes affecting dozens of aircraft simultaneously. The system that handles this is called the North Atlantic Organized Track System, and it's essentially a daily redesign of the highway system based on weather patterns and traffic demand. Every day, controllers analyze wind patterns, storm systems, and flight schedules to create optimal routes that minimize travel time and fuel consumption. It's like rebuilding the interstate highway system from scratch every 24 hours. But even this sophisticated system has limitations. Aircraft still need to maintain specific separation distances, which means that during peak hours, planes can be delayed simply because there's no room in the sky. Controllers have to balance efficiency with safety, and safety always wins, even if it means passengers arrive late. The human element in all this cannot be overstated. Despite all the advanced technology, the system ultimately depends on air traffic controllers making split-second decisions under enormous pressure. These professionals undergo years of training and must maintain constant certification, but they're still human beings dealing with life and death situations every day. What makes their job even more challenging is the international nature of the airspace system. A controller in Miami might be coordinating with colleagues in Nassau, Havana, and Kingston simultaneously, each operating under slightly different procedures and dealing with different types of aircraft. The margin for miscommunication is razor thin, yet somehow these interactions happen thousands of times daily without major incident. Looking toward the future, the international airspace system faces unprecedented challenges. Air travel demand is projected to double over the next 20 years, particularly in rapidly developing regions like Asia and Africa. Existing infrastructure simply cannot handle that level of growth without major upgrades and expansion. At the same time, new technologies are emerging that could revolutionize how aircraft navigate through international airspace. Satellite-based navigation systems promise to make air traffic control more precise and efficient, while artificial intelligence could help controllers manage increasingly complex traffic patterns. But implementing these technologies on a global scale requires international agreements that can take decades to negotiate and ratify. Every country has different priorities, capabilities, and concerns about sovereignty over their airspace. The stakes couldn't be higher. The international airspace system enables global commerce, connects families across continents, and makes our interconnected world possible. Yet most people never think about the invisible infrastructure that makes their international flights possible, until something goes wrong. So the next time you're on an international flight and you feel that slight course correction, or your pilot announces a brief delay due to air traffic control, take a moment to appreciate what's actually happening. You're experiencing one of humanity's greatest organizational achievements in real time. Thousands of people across multiple continents are working together seamlessly to guide your aircraft safely through an invisible maze of regulations, jurisdictions, and technological systems that most passengers never even realize exists. What started as a simple question about who controls the sky above the middle of the ocean has revealed something far more profound. International airspace isn't just about rules and regulations, it's about trust. Trust between nations that have fundamental disagreements on almost everything else. Trust between controllers who may never meet, but must coordinate split-second decisions. Trust between pilots and ground crews separated by thousands of miles in multiple time zones. This system proves that when humanity really needs to cooperate, we can create something truly extraordinary. Despite all the political tensions, economic disputes, and technological challenges, we've managed to build an invisible infrastructure that connects every corner of the globe safely and efficiently. The international airspace system is ultimately a testament to what becomes possible when we prioritize the common good over individual interests. And that's something worth remembering the next time you're cruising at 35,000 feet, watching the world pass by below.